Welcome back to the ethology classes. The next concept we are going to discuss is migration. So, migration is actually the back and forth mass movement of animals between two habitats to ensure optimal environmental conditions throughout the year. So, it can be described as an instinctive, regular, two-way movement of a part or all of an animal population to and from a given area, usually along a well-defined route, and it is closely linked to the seasonal changes and is triggered off by seasonal factors such as increasing and decreasing day lengths in spring and autumn. And here we can see that animals migrate to escape harsh climatic conditions. It could be extreme cold or extreme heat, and to get adequate food throughout the year. Migration has evolved among many animal groups. For instance, frogs, newts, sea turtles, buffaloes, zebra, wildebeests, sea lions, whales, butterflies, crabs, locusts, ladybirds, uh, birds, variety of birds, fishes, they all migrate. Some of them migrate very short distances, which are considered as a local migration type, or some may take up a long route for migration from one pole to another. So the distance traveled from species to species may vary, and uh, uh, one instance is like the crab, Ericae sinensis, who can only crawl slowly, travels 500 kilometers during the migration. Locust Schistocerca gregaria can fly and travel about 5,000 kilometers, but the longest distance covered is by Arctic tern that travels from Arctic to Antarctic, covering a distance of about 17,600 kilometers. So the distance traveled by the species it varies from one to other, and during the migration, the whole animal population may shift from one to the other habitat or a part of it. Now, migration on a periodic uh, or seasonal basis can be found among various animals like butterflies, locusts, salmons. In some species, periodic migration occurs in response to changes in environmental conditions. For instance, the Schistocerca gregaria. On the other hand, some seasonal migrants take to migration on the basis of the circanum rhythm rather than the changes in the what you call environment. Okay, so for example, migratory birds. Migratory birds they take up migration every year. Okay, so it is a circumannual rhythm. While some of the species, for example, Schistocerca gregaria, they take up migration based on the changes in the environment. So it may be once in a year. The frequency may change according to the seasonal changes. Uh, in addition to seasonal migration, some animals also undertake migration as a part of their exploration and colonization to new habitats. For example, the European collared dove, they have taken up such kind of exploratory migration and has expanded its range over decades. Um, what actually causes migration? What are the reasons? Even though it is not fully understood, migration is believed to be an integrated uh, an output of integrated functioning of physiological processes and behavioral mechanisms, uh, and an interplay of environmental, reproductive, and hormonal factors. Environmental factors such as scarcity of food, photoperiod, temperature variations, pressure changes, weather conditions, etc., also trigger migration. Now, with respect to bird migration, there are different types of migration identified. The first one is daily migration or local migration, wherein the animals they take up daily migrations from their resting sites to the feeding areas. Okay. For example, house sparrows, daily migrations they will move from their nest or the resting site to the feeding site and move back to the what you call resting site by the evening. So that's kind of a migration is referred as a daily migration. Now we have a seasonal migration, wherein migrations happens in response to seasonal changes, and that is very common. So in tropical and subtropical areas, they occur in the beginning. These kind of migrations occur in the beginning or end of the warm season, In temperate areas, the movements are triggered by the onset of winters. That is extreme low temperature, which the animals may not be able to tide over. So those animals, those migrant animals, they usually move down towards the tropical areas. So here what happens is they those animals that rest in temperate zones, especially the birds, they move to warmer areas for the winter and then return to the breeding areas in the following spring. Such migrations are found in Europe, North American, and Asian birds. And this sort of migrations are best known in Northern Hemisphere, where there are tremendous changes happening in the environment, especially during the winter season. Okay. So one example we can find of the seasonal migration are the we have the Siberian cranes which move from the Siberia towards the northern part of India to tide over or to escape the harsh winter conditions. Then cyclic migrations here actually refer to those migrations which are taken up uh, by, seasonally, but it needn't be at regular intervals. Okay, this is seasonal migration, but not a regular intervals. So the cyclic migration, it is exhibited by snowy owl in the United States in winter, and it occur in 3 to 5 years. So once in 3 to 5 years, such kind of seasonal migration happens, and that kind of migration is referred as a cyclic migration. Seasonal migration is actually happens every year during that particular season. Okay, but cyclic migration happens in a particular season, but needn't be every year. Okay, so that is the difference. Now, latitudinal migration, it is a migration from north to south or south to north, and it is the most common commonest migration taken up by birds, and they migrate from the north to south during the winter and south to north during the springtime. Okay, so there are plenty of examples we can find for latitudinal migration or latitudinal migrants. And one example we have here is the Arctic tern. Uh, Arctic tern migrates from Canada to Antarctica, crosses the Atlantic Ocean both times, that is during back and forth movement during its migration flights. Another example we have is the American golden plover. They escape winter of America by migrating to Argentina. Similarly, some birds they leave Siberia to go to Himalayas, and about one third of the birds of Europe spend their winters in Africa. So all these are actually latitudinal migration from north to south or from south to north. Okay. Now the next one is altitudinal migration. It is vertical migration. Um, Actually, the migration along the height. Okay. So species that live in mountains they adjust to changing seasons, generally during winters, by moving downward to warmer and lower altitudes, where more food and shelter are available. One example is the coots of Andes, the Andes Mountains in Argentina. They move downward during the winter season, uh, and they go back to the hills when the summers return. Okay. So this kind of migration is mainly to escape the um, harsher conditions and also to escape the short supply of food when it is during the fall time at the high altitude areas. Okay. So longitudinal migration, that is the next one. It is a movement of birds from east to west or vice versa. It is somewhat almost opposite to latitudinal migration. And here one example we have is the Californian gulls that breed in Utah migrate westward to winter on the Pacific coast. Another we have starlings that move from East Europe or Asia to the Atlantic coast. So every here it is latitudinal migration from east to west or west to east. Okay, so these are the different types of migration, especially with reference to birds. When we speak of about fishes, that there are yet another type of migration which can be included under vertical migration. Uh, that is, it moves down and towards the surface waters, and during the night time it moves down. It could be daily migration. It could be also vertical migration. That is, the fishes they move towards the surface waters during the night time, and during the daytime it moves down to avoid the heat. Okay. Similarly, we can see there is yet another migration in fishes. It is Catadromous and Anadromous. Catadromous migration is the migration taken up by the fishes from freshwater to the seas. And Anadromous migration, it is just the opposite. That is, the freshwater forms, the what you call marine forms, they migrate from seas to the like rivers or streams during the migration. So Catadromous and Anadromous migration is specifically found in fishes. So these are the few types of migration. Now, what are the advantages of migration? So as we have seen, causes, it could be physiological, it could be hormonal, it could triggered by the environmental factors, etc. Now, what are the advantages? The first one is actually escape adverse environmental conditions. This help in this kind of a migration, it helps to tide over adverse environmental conditions, especially extreme temperatures. Then it also helps the animals to exploit the resources of new habitats, exploit two different habitats, and also help in incessant food supply. Then it ensures sufficient food supply and favorable environmental conditions throughout the year, irrespective of the environmental conditions and the seasons. It also helps to increase opportunity for sexual reproduction and thereby promote population expansion. In the same way, it also increases genetic diversity. Um, the what do you call since it increases uh, opportunity for gene exchange, it also increases genetic diversity. Then reduces predation pressure. That is, in the breeding grounds, the migratory birds arrive in large numbers, and hence the pressure of predation, it is actually equally distributed among all the members of the particular population, and this results in greater individual survival, that is reducing the predation pressure. Then it also helps in increasing the adaptability by exposing the migrants to diverse environmental conditions. It increases the adaptability than the resident birds. So these migratory birds they are subjected to greater ecological diversity and hence have a greater range of adaptability than those birds which don't take up migration. Okay. During migration, heavy mortality can be found, but it is prevented by overpopulation and thereby regulate population size. So these are a few advantages of migration, but they do have disadvantages as well. So migration is actually with respect to time and energy, it is a highly expensive activity, and also it can also cause heavy casualties due to fatigue, exhaustion, predation, and environmental hazards. We can see that when birds migrate, there are many hunting happens, and hence the population which starts off from their breeding grounds may not reach the feeding ground, the whole population. It may almost reduce to 50%. So that kind of a what you call heavy casualty can be found during the migratory activity. Okay. So this is all about migration.